Hi everybody. We'll wait a couple more minutes for the rest of the folks who might be wanting to join, and then we'll get started. In the meantime, I've allowed for mics to be used, so everybody's mic is muted right now, but if later on, if you have a question and you want to ask it, you'll be able to unmute and ask your question.
No, you're fine. Thank you so much.
That's fine. I'm just listening to the training eventually when it starts.
Okay, so we're going to get started. Today's presentation is on the standards for STARS Level 2 and how to prepare to create a program improvement plan for STARS Level 2. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand using the raise hand symbol in the toolbar at the top of your screen, or you can type it into the chat, or I'll pause and ask for questions if anyone has questions, and we can get people can get their questions answered in any one of those variety of ways. I'll be sending out DPD forms at the end of this training. The DPD form is for your records. You don't need to send it to Northern Lights at CCB to have it put into your credential account, because I will be sending attendance from this training in, and that's how your information will get entered into your account. I'm noticing there's a couple people in here who either are from NACI accredited programs or Head Start programs. And of course, you're more than welcome to stay for the training, but your programs will automatically be awarded 5 stars as they have been in the past. And so unless you're really curious about STARS Level 2, as I said, of course, you're welcome to be here, but you won't need to be meeting the criteria for STARS Level 2 for your STARS application, because we've compared the STARS criteria with the NACI standards and have found that the NACI standards and Head Start standards exceed the standards for STARS Level 5. So those programs are automatically receive STARS Level 5. And okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. Okay. So as I mentioned, this training is a presentation about STARS Level 2 and the self-study process for the STARS system. The self-study process is used to determine professional knowledge of program staff in areas that are directly related to the 3 elements of quality of the STARS system. And it forms the basis of what programs will be doing as they go forward in the system. And the 3 elements of quality that are in STARS are adult-child interactions, family and youth engagement, and responsive practice. So the first thing that programs will do as their self-study process will be to identify the professional knowledge that the staff of the program have in the following topics. The Vermont Early Learning Standards, or for after-school programs, the Vermont After-School Program Standards. And I'm just gonna mute you. And then developmentally appropriate practice, knowledge of external program assessment, which is CLASS for early childhood programs, and program quality assessment for after-school programs, and TPOT or Tippy Toes for programs that are implementation sites for early MTSS. Program staff will demonstrate that they have knowledge of child observation. Someone's saying my volume is low. Can I make it louder? Yeah, I can. Is that better? Is that volume better? Somebody can put in the chat.
I can hear you just fine, Johanna.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so where were we? Oh, yes. Child observation, diversity, equity, inclusion, and strengthening families program self-assessment or Youth Thrive survey. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 elements of quality that are in the STARS system, and that programs will demonstrate they have their use of these elements of quality in all the levels of STARS above STARS level 1. The Vermont Early Learning Standards and Vermont After School Program Standards, developmentally appropriate practice, child observation, and knowledge and awareness of diversity, equity, inclusion are all in support of the responsive practice element of quality for STARS. External program assessment, such as CLASS and PQA, are in support of the adult-child interactions element of STARS, and strengthening families program self-assessment or Youth Thrive survey are in support of the family engagement element of quality in STARS, family and youth engagement element of quality. So the Vermont Early Learning Standards or Vermont After School Standards of Quality are one of the knowledge areas that programs will be asked to demonstrate as part of the STARS application. And I should mention before I go any farther, in the current system, programs were in the current system that is going to be inactive for today and tomorrow. and Monday. No, today and tomorrow, the last 2 days of the current system. In that system, we looked at how many hours of training an individual had. We looked at professional credentials like licensure. We looked at a level of credentials like a degree or a child development associate credential. And instead of, and which was kind of a measure of how much training or education a person would have. In the new system, we decided that it would be better to look at the type of training that people have and how they're able to implement in their programs. So rather than a measure of how much training, it's a measure of how well the person is able to use their professional knowledge in the classroom. As the knowledge is used as it progresses through the stars levels. So it's a bit of a shift in thinking, and that same shift applies to all the stars elements and standards that we have. So one way to demonstrate that a program has this knowledge is of the VELS or Vermont After School Standards of Quality is that coursework or trainings appear in a person's BFIS credential account. If the program is UPK pre-qualified, then as part of that pre-qualification application, the program's demonstrated that they use the VELS, that domains of the VELS are implemented in their curriculum. And so that they don't have to do that again for stars. We accept the pre-qualification as evidence that that knowledge exists in the program. If the staff person if staff people in the program have educator licenses for early childhood education or with an early childhood endorsement, once again, they've provided information to a licensing body that they meet the criteria, that they understand the VELS and have knowledge of the VELS. And so we accept that for stars without having to do another providing evidence in another way. If staff have taken the VELS modules, and I do want to say that the VELS modules are under development, and by the Agency of Education, I am not sure exactly when those are going to be made available, as well as the Vermont After School Standards of Quality. Those standards of quality have been developed and they have been approved, but I do not know when they're going to be made widely publicly available. But I do know that Vermont After School will be providing trainings about those Vermont After School Standards of Quality as well. And the last way that a program can demonstrate they have this knowledge or any knowledge that's required for stars is to present a written reflection describing their knowledge. I'll check and see what's in the chat. So these presentations are being recorded, and the best recording of the presentation will be edited and put on the CDD website. I sent folks copies of these PowerPoint slides after the last training, and if people would like that, I can just attach this slide deck to your DPD form email, so you'll have that as well. So moving on to developmentally appropriate practice. So one way to demonstrate having knowledge of developmentally appropriate practice is having taken developmentally appropriate practice trainings from NACI. If staff have an educator license in early childhood education or an early childhood endorsement, we're going to assume that they understand developmentally appropriate practice. If staff have completed coursework on child development and learning, or if the program presents a written reflection describing knowledge of developmentally appropriate practice. And I do want to mention that in the past, NACI trainings available on the NACI website have not been approved for credential accounts. But they are now approved, and if you take a training from NACI for STARS, when you get to the end of your training, there's a printable certificate that you receive. If you print your certificate and send it to Northern Lights with a cover sheet, you will receive credit for the training. And we okay. So I'm going to move on to program assessment. So for programs to demonstrate or verify they have knowledge, the program staff have knowledge of program assessments. The program have taken trainings on class, program assessment, or TPOT and Tippy Toes. And as I mentioned before, TPOT and Tippy Toes would be counted if the program is an implementation site for early MTSS. And if the program is an implementation site, they will be receiving training on TPOT and Tippy Toes. And so that's how we'll verify that they have this knowledge. If the program has had a class assessment or a PQA assessment by a STARS assessor in the past 2 years, we will use that. We will accept that as evidence that program staff have knowledge of the class or PQA assessment. If the program is a early I already mentioned early MTSS. If the program is a Head Start program or a Head Start partner program where class assessments are provided, because Head Start partner programs don't always have Head Start served children in every classroom, the classrooms that have received class assessments can be counted. It can be counted in that way. So there are questions. So if a staff has a degree in early childhood education, that wouldn't automatically count. But if they've submitted their transcript to Northern Lights at CCV, we can look at their transcript and we can see the courses that they've taken. And if their coursework has included child development, something that's related to developmentally appropriate practice, then we would say that would count. So here's a question about TPOT and Tippy Toes. If you took a training about TPOT and Tippy Toes, but you're not an implementation site for early MTSS, then the STARS system isn't going to be providing assessments using TPOT and Tippy Toes as part of the early MTSS implementation process. AOE will be providing, or Pyramid 802 or whoever their contractee is, will be providing TPOT and Tippy Toes. And so that is only going to count if the program is an implementation site for early MTSS. Otherwise, it would be class that you would want to be demonstrating knowledge of, or the PQA. So I'm going to get to who needs the knowledge in a couple more slides. So that question will be answered at that point in the presentation. And And the last area, one of the areas of knowledge, it's not the last one, is if staff have taken trainings on implicit bias, culturally appropriate positive guidance, diversity, equity, and inclusion, responsive practice, or provide a written reflection describing their knowledge of the topic. And I mentioned that there are NACCE trainings are acceptable, and there are NACCE trainings on all these topics that are available on their website, as well as if you go to the Northern Lights website, there is a list of organizations that provide online real-time or online anytime trainings that are accepted, and there is a wide variety of trainings on the topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, cultural competence, and the like. Okay, so now to address the question of who needs to demonstrate this knowledge. So the standards for knowledge differ for program type because of the staffing structure for each type of program and what it makes sense for a program to be able to achieve reasonably. So knowledge gaps will be addressed in the CQI plan for STARS Level 2 and begin implementing closing those knowledge gaps at STARS Level 3. Any gaps in knowledge on the topics will have been addressed, and strategies for narrowing these gaps will be fully complete and implemented in programming by the time the program has reached STARS Level 5. For center-based programs, universal pre-K partners, and public school operated preschool programs, the CQI plan will address knowledge gaps if the combined staff for each classroom or group does not meet the knowledge standards for STARS Level 2. So in other words, if there are 4 staff in a classroom, say, and one person has an educator license, but they don't have training on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but someone else who works in that same classroom group does have that knowledge, then it would be covered for the whole group. For home-based programs, the CQI plan will address knowledge gaps if the provider does not meet 50% of the knowledge requirements. That's for STARS Level 2. By the time the home-based program has reached STARS Level 5, they'll have met all the requirements, but for STARS Level 2, 50%. And then for after-school programs, the CQI plan will address the knowledge gap if the staff in the program the entire staff of the program does not meet the knowledge requirements. And are there any questions about that? I'll pause and slow down for a minute and give people a chance to think about that and formulate their questions if they have any. Okay. So the last piece of the self-study for STARS Level 2. What was the definition of group? So group would be the teaching staff for each classroom. If teachers are not in the same, so we would want each, and the reason I say classroom or group, because in some after school programs, for example, there wouldn't be classrooms, but there would be groups. So when I say group, I mean classrooms. So if you have 2 pre-K classrooms, your classroom staff in each one of those pre-K classrooms would need to meet the knowledge standards for STARS level 2. And if you have an infant classroom and a toddler classroom, the staff in your infant room would need to meet the knowledge for STARS level 2, all of it together. And then same thing with the toddler class. Classroom, not to be confused with toddler class, the program assessment tool. So during the self-study process, the program assesses or determines what the knowledge is for their program staff and what the gaps are. And they also engage in a strengthening families program self-assessment or a youth thrive survey for after-school programs that serve older children and youth. The center and develops goals to include in their CQI plan for family and youth engagement. The Center for the Study of Social Policy website has a variety of resources and information and strategies for implementing the Strengthening Families and Youth Thrive frameworks. These resources are free and they're available on the Center for the Study of Social Policy website. And there are links to that website in the STARS guidance manual, and you can also easily find it just by typing CSSP into your search bar. And the purpose of using these Strengthening Families or Youth Thrive survey is to develop a baseline for your activities going forward that you're going to use for family or youth engagement in your program. Okay. I'm going to move to the next slide. So after determining knowledge gaps and reviewing the information that's provided that the program receives through doing the Strengthening Families program self-assessment or Youth Thrive survey, the program can assess whether or not they've met the standards of STARS level 2. If the standards are not met, a CQI plan to address the gaps will be created. If the standards are met, the program can use the evidence collected as part of the self-study to demonstrate they meet STARS level 2 and can move on to a higher STARS level. So compiling the information from the self-study process includes the results of the Strengthening Families program self-assessment or Youth Thrive survey, and a description of the knowledge gaps in the topics of developmentally appropriate practice, Vermont early learning standards or Vermont after school core knowledge areas, program assessment using class, PQA, or TPOT and Tippy Toes, cultural competence, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and child observation and its use in child observation and its use in curriculum development. Seems like I'm missing a slide for that one. Then the CQI plan, you can use that, the CQI plan you can use that information to begin populating your CQI plan. We have a template for the plan, and I will show that to you next. And yes, the slides can be available. I can send them attached to your email that I will that I'm going to send tomorrow or later today with your DPD form on it. And let's see. So if you need more information, you can email the STARS email, stars@vermont.gov. You can go to the STARS website, which the link is here, but that probably doesn't do you a whole lot of good. Well, actually, let me see if I can put it in the chat. Also, you can also give me a call. And if you call and leave me a message, I will call you back if I'm not available to take your call right at that moment in time. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. So before I go on to show the example CQI form and talk a little bit more about that, does anybody have any questions for me about the standards for STARS Level 2 and how they're met? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you a sample of the CQI plan that's completed with 100% made up information. Now, let's see, where am I? I see that your hand is up, Pam. You have a question?
Yeah, so if we are an implementation site, what do we do to document? How do we show that?
So I assume that if you're an implementation site that you have some kind of a written agreement or contract or something like that in place with the Agency of Education. And so that you could use that for your verification, just a copy of that form. So this is what the CQI plan template looks like, and which you can use this template as a guide for creating your plan, and also you can make up your own plan form if you have another idea of how you want to describe your process, but this one's available for anyone to use. And before I talk anymore about that, I want to just go over what a continuous quality improvement plan is. It's a plan where you set goals for your program, where you create objectives based on those goals, and where you implement small steps for improvement and track your improvement with documentation and information so that you can verify that positive changes have been made. And that process is the basis of the STARS application and the STARS system going forward, starting July 1 in just a couple of days. So for your STARS plan, you're going to identify your program. You're going to identify what STARS level you're applying for, or what the STARS level your program is at. And you'll identify the start date of not the date you wrote the plan, but the date you intend to start working on the plan goals. You'll also identify who wrote the plan and who's responsible for reporting the plan progress and for maintaining and for ensuring that continuous work is ongoing on the plan. The plan, you'll have goals in your plan for each one of the elements of quality, adult-child interactions, family and youth engagement, and responsive practice. As I mentioned earlier, for STARS Level 2, there are trainings that support each one of these elements of quality. For instance, so if you're creating a CQI plan for STARS Level 2 for adult-child interactions, your goals are going to be about learning, filling, your goals are going to be about addressing the knowledge gaps about program assessments, such as class or the PQA. If your family and youth engagement is going to be, your goals are going to be related to the program self-assessment that you did, and they'll be the just beginning steps toward family and youth engagement based on that self-assessment process. And then your goals for responsive practice will be addressing the knowledge gaps in child observation, developmentally appropriate practice, the VELS or Vermont after-school program standards, and responsive practice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and cultural competence. And the sample goals here are sample goals for STARS Level 3. So then the next thing that you'll include in your plan is what data sources and evidence did you use to determine what your goals were? And you'll also submit that evidence as part of your STARS application. And you'll use that evidence, you'll update that evidence and information as you continue, as you progress towards your plan goals. So this gives you a baseline for collecting information and data for your CQI plan. And then here's some sample objectives. So objectives are what I want to say, elements of your goals. So the goal is the broader and longer term outcome that you want to achieve in the 3 years of that you're going to address in your CQI plan. And the objectives are how you break those goals down into smaller, more manageable pieces that you continue to work toward compiling successful completion of those objectives toward your goals. So this is also a little bit of an illustration of the process of achieving the objectives and goals. So for example, in this CQI plan, for each one of the objectives, the program's listed what goal the objective is working toward and what element of quality they're working on. So you would have these plan, do, study, act cycles for each one of the elements of quality and objectives that address each one of the goals that you have for each one of the elements of quality. And I'll just, and these are just examples. You'll be choosing your own goals. You'll be choosing your own objectives. You'll be using your own determinations of what you want to work on. This is just an example of how the completed CQI plan document can look. And I will attach, I'll send these a sample of a completed CQI plan form and a blank one for you, as well as this PowerPoint presentation. And then I'll just quickly scroll down and see what responsive practice objectives and goals might look like. And I'm just going to leave it there for a second for folks to look at and think about what questions you might have. And one thing I would like to mention is I left space for 2 goals for each one of the elements of quality in this plan form, but you'll be adding as many goals as you determine are necessary to achieve the desired result for your program, as the same with how many objectives and how many plan, do, study, act cycles you implement as you work toward the positive change in your program.
Johanna, I have a quick question. So like the previous STARS application, you know, we checkboxed, there was a list of stuff that was, if you want to do STARS level 1, you would like check off if you met those criteria, and then if you did all that, then you can move on to 2. I put in the chat, do you need a CQI plan for each?
Yeah.
So it sounds like, say I have stuff for 1. How would I know if I had the stuff for level 1? Like, is there going to be a checklist and then I can just check it and then show and put it in my application? That's all of my stuff for level 1. And then if I have all my stuff for level 2, work on level 2, and then my CQI plan would be for level 3, say? Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
Your CQI plan will be for the level, the STARS level that you want to maintain or achieve. And then, but you will provide verification that you met the standards at the levels below. So STARS level 1 is licensing.
Will there be a checklist on the application, or?
Yes. In the guidance manual, there's, I shouldn't say yes, there'll be a checklist. In the guidance manual, there's a list of all the standards and what you can submit for evidence. And so, but we could create a checklist, couldn't we, Maggie?
Well, I was just wondering, like, in the application,
make it easier. Yeah.
It would be easier for programs to be like, okay, step 1, licensing. Okay, we're licensed. Check that off.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
step 2, you need A, B, and C, and then check it all off, and then submit application or evidence proving A, B, and C. And then step number 3, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then submit. And then if you want to go to 4, and then that way it's like organized-ish in a way that it's clear.
Right.
I don't know. I'm a list person, so that's why I was wondering, because I'm getting confused trying to visualize this, how it works.
Right.
So that's why I was wondering, the CQI plan, we have to do each, so we don't really have to do a goal for what we've already achieved. We have to do a goal for what either we want to achieve a level 4 or we want to stay at a level 4.
Yes,
okay, got it.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so was that Amy that just asked the question?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to lower my hand.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. There you go. So I do want to mention also that for programs that apply during the first year, which is July 1, 2023 to June 30th, 2024, in that year, regardless of what your what I'm trying to say, regardless of the STARS level, regardless of what you put in your application, if you apply at that time during that pilot year, you'll still maintain your same STAR level that you're at. Nobody's going to be in danger of going down when they're using the system for the first time and we're using the system for the first time. It's about all of us learning about how it works the best way. And then the other thing I was thinking about that somebody's question made me think of. Oh well. Shoot, I don't remember what. I lost track of my thought. Oh, the other thing is that there will be there is a program that's launching as soon as the staff can be hired, and they're in the hiring process now. And that is called Sparks. It is administered by Vermont AEYC and funded by a grant from the Child Development Division. And it is a system for program quality supports for programs. The program assessments will be provided through Sparks. Program assessments will be provided through Sparks. Support for creating continuous quality improvement plans and applying to STARS will be provided through Sparks, and Vermont Early Childhood Networks will be managed through Sparks. So all those things are going to be happening starting up in the late summer or early fall to provide supports for the, greater supports for the field in developing program quality. And the Spark system is not limited to STARS participants or people who are working on increasing in STARS. It's available to all licensed and regulated early childhood programs. Yes, you can go up in STARS during the pilot year. And I see another hand. Is that Maggie?
That's me. I was just going to say, Haley was saying, Holly was saying that she was missing something, and that it's hard to visualize without the information. So maybe if she will maybe verbalize what she's missing, maybe we could bring up what she would like to see on the screen.
Okay, yeah, we can try to do that. Shoot, there was another thing. Oh, I know what it was. This was about the checklist and determining what STARS level, what STARS evidence that you provide. So there's going to be an online application, and it's going to be a portfolio style application. So the application can guide you through that process as well. Holly, are you trying to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I just have a hearing loss, and so staring at this screen with nobody on it is really difficult for me to comprehend what you're saying.
All right, well, let me see if I can enable the cameras then. Would that be helpful?
It would.
All right, let's see if I can do that. Allow camera for attendees. All right. So, and if folks want to, in the toolbar, you can turn your camera on, and then we should be able to see faces if you aren't afraid to show your face. The STARS meeting. Okay. Okay. Any other questions that people have? Thinking I'm missing. Okay, so what is the time frame for trainings to count as evidence? That's a good question and something that we haven't considered. I think it's if you've ever had the trainings and can demonstrate that you have the knowledge, or demonstrate that you have the knowledge. And the Vermont, when we developed the system, we were under the impression that VEL's trainings were going to be available imminently. And now I don't know what the timeline for those trainings are. So we won't reasonably able to do, we wouldn't reasonably be able to say that a program couldn't demonstrate they met the standards if the trainings were indeed not available. My camera's on, so I'm not sure why you can't see me. Okay, let's see. Kayla has a question.
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Okay.
I had a question. So
Sure.
about the trainings, do you have to send in the like training certificates, or are you guys going to be accessing like BFIS accounts?
No, we'll be able to access your BFIS accounts. Anything that's there, you won't have to submit. Let's see, what other questions are in the chat? Okay, yes, in the past, the trainings would only go back to 5 years because because we're looking about how much, how well do you implement your knowledge rather than, how many trainings you've had. It doesn't make sense to say that you don't have the knowledge anymore if you took the training more than 5 years ago or more than 1 year ago or however long it is. For example, I got my bachelor's degree in 1977. And I think I still remember a few of the things about child development that I learned then. I wouldn't want someone to tell me I had to take it all over again or it wouldn't count. Let's see. Any other questions that folks have? I do want to say there will be, we already did the trainings about continuous quality improvement plan and the Plan, Do, Study, Act implementation cycles that are the pieces that make up the bigger plan. And it will be posted on the Child Development Division website as soon as it's ready and available. So if you missed that and the parts that I'm talking about for the CQI plan make absolutely no sense, you'll be able to view that training and in your own time and hopefully make a little more sense out of it. There's also information in the guidance manual about continuous quality improvement plans. So if reading it is more helpful to you than listening to someone talk about it, then you have that option as well. So the other thing that I don't know the answer to about if the trainings will be offered again. I won't be doing the trainings after this because at the end of August, I'll be retiring. There will be a person who will be taking my place and I think, and the trainings for the STAR system are more likely going to be provided through Sparks, but you'll be able to see when they're listed on they'll probably be posted on the Vermont AEYC website, as well as in the Northern Lights training calendar when they're available. Any other questions? And if you have questions about the STARS system overall, you can ask those as well. I don't just have to be related to this STARS level 2 discussion. So the strengthening families self-assessment, if you just did it and you have goals that you're working toward already, especially if you are not applying for STARS level 2, then you don't have to redo it again. Although it wouldn't be a bad idea if you've developed goals from your last one to do the self-assessment again and see if you come up with a different result and have improved on your goals. So I wouldn't say, I would actually recommend doing it, but you don't have to, as long as you can develop goals for your program improvement, for your continuous quality improvement plan based on the information that you got from your last self-assessment and if you're still working toward it. Okay, so if there aren't more questions, I'll wait a little bit longer just in case there are. I'll be sending out your DPD form later today or tomorrow. I will attach the PowerPoint slides for your reference, and let's see, did anybody want me to attach the CQI plan forms as well? Because I won't remember individually, but if anybody wants them, I'll just put them on all. Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'd like a copy of that, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if there are no more questions, I will let all of you go. Have a wonderful 4th of July, and we'll see you soon, I hope. Maybe at another one of these STARS trainings. Thanks, everybody.